As at the end of the financial year 2025 and halfway through the 2025 calendar year, I am a CPA with 4.5 years of experience. That's a pretty good spot to be in this labour market. If I took these 2 extra shifts permanently, which is extremely doable since I have basically 3 stores at a minimum to choose from, my total employment compensation would increase to about $142,000 per year. And that's not counting any raises from my primary office job. So far this year, I've made a bit over $65,000, so the $127,000 per year figure I've calculated that I'm currently making is about right. We've dropped almost 1 kilo in the past 2 weeks compared to just hovering at the same weight for a month. But at the very least, you can see some gains here. Shoulder looks unusually large compared to my arm. Not sure if big shoulders or small biceps, probably a bit of both. And have found some good resources. There's also a good new set of indicators that have been helpful. More testing is required, but so far, there's some good promise. It'll literally tell you when a stock has broken through resistance or support at these heavy volume levels. And breaking through either direction is a great signal to either buy or sell a stock. There was a break of heavy resistance around $32 about 2 years ago, and then the stock continued to rally up until about $140 around 9 months later, then bounced around varying levels of support and resistance for a while, before breaking through the new resistance once again of around $142, before once again bouncing around for a while. It also applies in reverse. We can see here that Abercrombie & Fitch broke support at around $126 in early January of 2025. This wasn't a Liberation Day sell-off that caused the whole market to tank. This was specific to the stock. And since then, the stock has continued to plummet. At the time of writing, the stock is around $80, so the stock is down about 36% from the time the indicator showed a break in resistance. In a roundabout way, this is a good buy/sell indicator. But the real progress is in my primary place of residence, my PBOR, my house, my new dwelling, my new base of operations. Then the concrete slab was poured, then the frame was up, then the roof and bricks were up, then the facade was up, then they had the cabinetry installed, then they had the tiles in. I, a single 28-year-old male who did not come from money, literally lived in a shed for most of my primary school years, with no inheritance from any grandparents, with parents who both work low-paying jobs, with a large family, meaning I'm not some spoiled child, and I also stuffed up my career early on, basically putting me 2 to 3 years behind where I should be, career-wise, has managed to secure his own house, on his own, before the age of 29, with a very affordable mortgage repayment in Australia, which is possibly the worst country in the world in terms of housing affordability. Based off of current figures, my mortgage repayment is about 31% of my after-tax income. Some metrics say this is a very high amount. I don't think so. It's pretty doable. And considering a lot of people are spending like 50% of their take-home pay on rent, or more, it also doesn't consider if I took up those extra shifts I mentioned earlier. If I took up those 2 extra shifts, my mortgage would be less than 28% of my take-home pay. I could be in a scenario where I'm having more than $2,000 per week in after-tax pay flowing into my bank account, all whilst owning my own home, and even including for the home payment. I'd have $2,000 a week to play with money-wise after I've paid for my house. The point is, I am not drowning in debt. This mortgage is not debilitating me. I can afford this easily. Even if I do lose my job, as I recently calculated, I'd have at least 3 years before I ran out of money, and even up to 17 years if a few things went in my favor, possibly more. And even if I did lose my job, with my education and experience, the next job I find would only pay me more, since I am underpaid at my current office job compared to my market skills. All this is to say, I am safe. This is not a volatile situation whereby I'm one job loss away from having to sell my house. I can only really lose this house by gambling it away, and I already gamble. I know how not to gamble my whole life savings away. And I can also lose the house if I get married to the wrong woman. And as I've mentioned in prior videos, I have some financial criteria for a partner to hit before I'd consider dating them. I literally cannot lose from here on out. The hard yards are done. Subscriber count has legit not grown since late April. More than 2 months of no growth, despite uploading like 16 videos since then. 16 videos and you can't even get 1 new subscriber? I've uploaded about 44 videos in 2025 and I've made $188.62 in ad revenue. This is after YouTube's cut of it, I'm pretty sure, but it's also before taxes. After taxes, it's more like around $150-ish, maybe less. And if you saw a video on a recent side hustle idea, that being my literal wagey job, I can make more, picking up 2 extra night shifts in 1 week, which are not very intrusive on my schedule. I still get home with plenty of time to relax before bed. I make more money in those 2 extra shifts, one standard 5-day weeknight, than I get in an entire half year on YouTube. If I run the numbers, the extra income I receive from spending 7 extra hours at a wagey job each week literally provides me with enough after-tax money to pay for my projected fuel costs, grocery costs, car costs, example tires mechanic, and social events for an entire year. Basically, the extra shifts cover 4 expenses in my life, 2 of them being major expenses. If I had spent all that extra time working on a YouTube channel, which is literally what I was doing in 2025 until recently, what does that get me? Maybe $150 after tax? What does that pay for? A few dinners with friends? Or 2 weeks of petrol? I wonder what choice I should make. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to pick more time at the wagey job over the failing YouTube channel. I'd be fine with spending more time on YouTube if I was seeing some growth. I don't care about an extra $1.20 in ad revenue, but seeing an extra 200 subscribers, for example, would absolutely go a long way to keeping motivation for grinding out the YouTube stat. But clearly, I'm not seeing that, am I? So why would I forfeit money that can cover 4 expenses in my life to keep growing a channel that isn't growing? Simple. I wouldn't. Sheesh. Feels like just yesterday I made my 2023 half-year update, let alone my 2024 one. Time flies when you're making big moves. So as is tradition on this channel, this video will give a snapshot of what my life is looking like from the perspective of my 5 key stats in the game of life. That being my career, my money, aka income earned, personal finances, etc., my aesthetics, aka my gym progress, my investments, aka my stock trading, my portfolio, my real estate, and lastly, my brand, most notably my YouTube channel. Starting off with my career, honestly, not much to report. It was easier back in the day to make progress updates with my career since I was earlier in my career and I was still studying for the CPA program. However, with the education being complete and being a bit deeper into my career, there's really not much to report. I'm still at the same job, still doing the same tasks, nothing major to report. I will say though, over the last 6 months, I've added some extra experience on my resume. Obviously, this extra half a year stacks on top of my already existing 4 years of experience, bringing the total up to 4.5, pretty close to 5 years, which is a good baseline of experience when applying for other jobs out there. I technically have more experience due to other roles I've had in the past, but it's not super important to include that on your resume and in job applications when you have a few years of steady experience anyway. And given all the job layoffs lately that are still continuing from 2023, you cannot really complain too much about this progress being slow, since it's still progress. As much as you don't want to think about it this way, if you are unemployed and not working in your specific career field, that is hurting your overall experience. Obviously, there's ways to lie, exaggerate, and omit periods of unemployment, and it's usually not super debilitating unless you're early in your career or are unemployed for years and years, but it still isn't as ideal as just working all the way through. Things like taking time off work for mental health are different. I'm not saying it's a waste spending periods of time not gaining experience, but from the career stat point of view, it certainly hurts when you're not working. So I am still working, so I am still stacking experience. As at the end of the financial year 2025 and halfway through the 2025 calendar year, I am a CPA with 4.5 years of experience. That's a pretty good spot to be in. Stat 2, money. So there was no pay rise this year at the office since the company does not have the money. They don't even have the money to keep all their existing staff, as mentioned in a recent video. So, no pay rises. I did get one from the supermarket job, but that 3.5% increase was mandated by the government, and it's not a whole heap. I believe it resulted in an extra $1,100 per year before taxes. Obviously not bad, but it's not some massive $20,000 a year increase. There is, however, the opportunity to make more money for my second job. Someone left recently and a few extra gaps in the roster have opened up. I told my manager I could do these shifts if required. I've gotten some of them lately, but some of them have also gone to someone else. So I think it's a bit of chop and change, which is fine, because I'm moving locations soon. I'll talk about that later. And if I got these shifts at my old store, it would be a pain in the ass to travel all the way back to the old store at night, then all the way back to my new home in time for work in the morning. Whereas, If I don't get these shifts, I can just ask a manager at another store for hours closer to my new location. But that former coworker leaving opened up the idea of picking up extra night shifts. As calculated in a prior video, I make about $133 from picking up an extra night. Spending that time making a YouTube video is a lesser trade-off. Yes, YouTube is more scalable, but I've been waiting for that viral hit for a long time, sacrificing a few hours of work, resulting in a slightly delayed video that would generate like $2.50 in total ad revenue, versus making an easy $133. Pretty straightforward choice for me. There's also time after work and before bed to suss some stocks, even after doing these shifts, and I can listen to stock traders on YouTube talking about their setups whilst I'm at work anyway, so I don't miss out on anything investor related. If I took these 2 extra shifts permanently, which is extremely doable since I basically have 3 stores at minimum to choose from, my total employment compensation would increase to about $142,000 per year, and that's not counting any raises from my primary office job, which, as a prior video mentioned, there's no money for pay raises at my office gig since they're just burning through money currently. I'm still fortunate to even be employed at all. I could easily get a $40,000 plus boost with a new job, but I have too many new variables currently in my life to be switching my primary job as well, so I'll keep my current path for now. But as it stands, we're still on about $127,000 per year total. This is the first year since I started working here where there's been no pay raise, but if you saw the company's finances, you'd understand. So far this year, I've made a bit over $65,000, and this figure was taken right before the end of the financial year, so the last payslip for the week hasn't come in yet. So the $127,000 per year figure that I've calculated that I'm currently making is about right. All I know is my finances are going pretty strong. I also have saved up a bit in the bank, but I've invested a lot lately, and the mortgage repayments have been a little rough. Never had recurring expenses that high, so it is a bit odd not seeing my bank account balance go up as fast as it usually does. Either way, money stayed doing pretty well, despite not having much progress, like the career stat. But hey, just like the career stat, at least it's still progressing. It'd be way worse if I had no job and was bleeding into my savings. Next stat, the aesthetic stat. This mostly refers to my gym stuff, but I'll quickly refer to my other aspects of my aesthetic stat. They also entail dental, Botox, and laser. I've had 1 dental appointment, since my specific private healthcare cover now covers 2 free dental appointments per year, of which I had 1 in the first half of the year. No major issues, thankfully. I've had a few laser hair removal appointments. We're starting to space them out more frequently, thankfully. Means there's less costs and less Fridays I need to make a detour on my way home to go and get laser. And I've had 1 Botox appointment, although I think the dosages are a bit too low at the moment, since there's still a visible wrinkle on my forehead. Usually this completely disappears after an appointment. Now that that's out of the way, we can talk about the fun stuff. Gym. So I've been on the cut. I've said the cut will go crazy in several videos in the past, and here we are 6 months later after the year started, and I'm still not done. This is either a slow and steady cut, or I am botching my cut. It's a bit of both. My body fat percentage was around 20% at the time of starting. It's now around 15%. Obviously, I wasn't going to go from 20% to 10% in a standard 12-week cut. I have had several disruptions to the cut through the year though, whether that be a family holiday, the Easter period, in which I got a lot of free Easter egg chocolates from my supermarket wagey job, or mum cooking a bunch of her special foods. I won't be at home much longer, so I will take these free bits of food while I still can. Doesn't sound like much, but when you spend 3 nights of your week in a calorie surplus due to eating the fried rice or cookies that your mum has cooked, instead of the usual 3 nights in a deficit, thus throwing off your calorie deficit for the week, enough of those weeks will cause your cut to stall. It's also a good part of cutting in the winter months, since it's winter currently here in Victoria, Australia. It buys you more time for your cut before summer comes. So here is the current graph that shows my weight cut. The gap at the start of the year around Feb was due to the aforementioned family holiday. Obviously, I'm not going to bring my scales on a family holiday, especially when there's barely any room in the suitcase as is, nor am I going to stick to a diet whilst on a family holiday. So that slight gap in the graph is a result of that. As you can see, it's trended down over the year. Had a slight dip in August, dipped down a bit, had a slight dip in April, dipped down a bit, then stayed stagnant for a while, and now we're back on the downtrend. I've managed to ramp things up as the year has come to a close though. We've dropped almost 1 kilo in total in the past 2 weeks compared to just hovering around the same weight for a month. And this is all the while eating heaps of junk food at my wagey job. Free food? Yes please. And I account for this by under-eating at my office job. The budget cuts are harsh. There used to be free food there twice a week. Now it's been like a year since I last saw free food in the staff room. But I suppose that's a good thing for my cut, since I'd probably be even further behind schedule with my cut if I had free snacks at my 5 days a week job, as opposed to only having free snacks at my 2 days a week job. Now, here are some gym-related pics from the recent 6 months. I didn't take many since most of the time I just wanted to get in and get out of the gym. I don't have time to be spamming selfies. Even then, the gym has just gotten busier and busier over the years. There's not much time for flexo clock. And even in the bathroom in my home or in my room, very rarely do I take the time to think about taking a pic. But at the very least, you can see some gains here. The shoulder looks unusually large compared to my arm. Not sure if big shoulders or small biceps, probably a bit of both, but considering I haven't shrunk drastically since starting this cut, I'd take that as a win. We shall see where I stand when I hit 10% body fat, currently around 15% at the moment. The difference between 10 and 15 is enormous for aesthetics. I've also recently added an extra scoop of protein powder to my daily diet. Just have 2 in my protein shake. For the longest time, I'm like, around 137 grams of protein is enough. It's on the lower end of the recommended range, but it's still within the range. Right? Should be right. Well, as I get closer to the end of my cut, I'll ideally need more protein anyway, and for an insurance policy, I should probably just have the extra scoop. 160 grams of protein per day seems a lot safer than 137. I always stinged out because the extra protein scoop, obviously, means I run through my protein powder a lot sooner. However, I snagged some good end of financial year deals from a couple of protein powder websites, so the slightly extra cost won't matter much, and also I'm misbalancing the stats in the game of life. I'm saving like $1 a day at the potential cost of some gains. Not really worth it. The extra insurance policy with the protein is worth the extra $1 per day. And if anything, the scoop will cost less due to the discounts I received on the recent protein packets. Not sure why I stinged out on this in the first place, but I've fixed that issue now. I've also always wondered why a lot more aesthetic guys seem to have a higher protein intake versus what's studied in the science. I don't want to be one of those science-based bros, but that excessive intake always seemed crazy high. In my prime, I never even hit 180 grams of protein per day, unless I went out for like barbecue at some restaurant or something, but it was like never in my planned diet. I still got pretty aesthetic. Would I have been more aesthetic with a higher intake? If you have excess protein that your body just doesn't use, it gets converted to glycogen, I know that. I guess some people prefer the better safe than sorry approach, but the thing is, protein is way more expensive than carbs. Buy a kilo of red meat and buy a kilo of rice, and tell me which hurts your wallet more. I just never saw that trade-off as being worth it. If any of you gym rat guys know the answer, please let me know, because I genuinely don't know why a lot of them seem to have unnecessarily high protein intakes. But all in all, there's progress in the aesthetic stat. It'd be hard to gauge exactly how much muscle has been gained until the cut is complete. Now, next section of my Game of Life stats, investments. This has had the most progress by far. The other areas have been progressing at a standard rate, but this stat has progressed at an accelerated rate. First off, my stock trading thingamajig. I've finished that stock trading course I've talked about for a while now, and although it had many useful tips, it didn't actually provide me with the specific info I was looking for, which is fine. I didn't pay for this anyway, it was a free one, but now I can go digging for exactly what I'm after. And I've found some good resources, just got to slowly get through them. There's also a good new set of indicators that have been helpful. More testing is required, but so far there's some good promise. One such indicator is this nice support and resistance with volume bars. It'll literally tell you when a stock has broken through resistance or support at these heavy volume levels, and breaking through either direction is a great signal to either buy or sell a stock. Example, Abercrombie & Fitch. There was a break of heavy resistance at around $32 about 2 years ago, and the stock continued to rally up until about $140 around 9 months later, then bounced around varying levels of support and resistance for a while, before breaking through the new resistance once again of around $142, before once again bouncing around for a while. It also applies in reverse. We can see here that ANF broke support at around $126 in early January. This wasn't a Liberation Day sell-off that caused the whole market to tank. This was specific to the stock. And since then, the stock continued to plummet. At the time of writing, the stock is around $80, so the stock is down about 36% from the time that the indicator showed a break in resistance. In a roundabout way, this is a good buy/sell indicator. Combining this with my secret weapon and other indicators, I'll be absolutely smoking the market in the months and years to come. It's not always an indication of several month-long rallies. Here's the indicator again, but for United Health. The two cases of break resistance and break support shown here didn't have a continuation for much longer after it happened, which is why you need to combine it with other indicators. However, it never seems to miss a big run. It caught a run up from about $533 to $600, and then it caught a breakdown at around $472, all the way down to about $300. So clearly there's some good promise with this one, which I didn't even know about until I started digging for this, which I only knew to do after completing my recent stock trading course. So clearly, the stock trading part of my investor stat is doing well, but nowhere near as well as the real estate part of the stat. I've learned a few more tips and tricks on where to invest in property in Australia, but I'll hone that skill once it becomes more applicable to me. But the real progress is in my primary place of residence, my PPOR, my house, my new dwelling, my new base of operations. They'd started the groundwork in early March, and since then, they've really been moving with getting this built. I had made detours to visit the house, or the block of land, multiple times, and each time there was a change. One time it was a vacant block of land, next time they had the fencing up to seal off the area, then the concrete slab was poured, then the frame was up, then the roof and bricks were up, then the facade was up, then they had the cabinetry installed, then they had the tiles in, then they sent out the documents showing the electrical and plumbing was complete. At the time of writing, we're in the final stretches. The site supervisor said in the coming weeks I'm due for a final inspection. That may have already happened by the time you're seeing this video, but there has been huge progress in this stat. I, a single 28-year-old male who did not come from money, I literally lived in a shed for most of my primary school years, with no inheritance from any grandparents, with parents who both work low-paying jobs, with a large family, meaning I'm not some spoiled child, who stuffed up his career early on, basically putting me 2 to 3 years behind where I should have been career-wise, has managed to secure his own house on his own before the age of 29 with very affordable mortgage repayments in Australia, which is possibly the worst country in the world in terms of housing affordability. Now, that is not a definitive fact. Most countries would have something to say about that, especially the lesser developed countries, but it's certainly no cakewalk where I am. There are many people here wondering if they'll ever afford a house, let alone an apartment, which are obviously quite a bit cheaper than standalone housing. But the fact I've achieved this before 29 is quite the feat. Especially, as I said before, my mortgage repayments are quite affordable. Based off of current figures, my mortgage repayment is about 31% of my after-tax income. Some metrics say this is a very high amount. I don't think so. It's pretty doable. And considering a lot of people are paying like 50% of their take-home pay on rent, or more, I'd say I'm getting off pretty well. The 30% of your take-home pay being considered as mortgage stress is likely based off of figures 20 plus years ago. I seriously doubt most people under the age of 40 have a mortgage repayment that's less than 30% of their take-home pay. My ratio is only this low due to an enormous down payment and a secondary job. And that also doesn't take into account the fact that I can rent out the 3 spare bedrooms. If I rented them out at $220 a week, it'd more than cover my mortgage. Easy. It also doesn't consider if I took up those extra shifts I mentioned earlier. If I took up those 2 extra shifts, my mortgage would be less than 28% of my take-home pay. Once again, it also doesn't count rental income. The rent in this scenario is lower to be conservative. I could be in a scenario where I'm having more than $2,000 per week in after-tax pay flowing into my bank account, also while owning my own home after I've paid off the mortgage for that week. The point is, I'm not drowning in debt. This mortgage is not debilitating me. I can afford this easily. Even if I did lose my job, as I recently calculated, I'd have at least 3 years before I ran out of money, and even up to 17 years if a few things went in my favor, possibly more. And even if I did lose my job, with my education and experience, the next job I find would only pay me more, since I am underpaid at my current office job compared to my market skills. All this is to say, I am safe. This is not a volatile situation whereby I'm one job loss away from having to sell my house. I can only really lose this house by gambling it away, and I already gamble. I know how not to gamble my whole life savings away, and I can also lose the house if I get married to the wrong woman. And as I've mentioned again in prior videos, I have some financial criteria for a partner to hit before I'd consider dating them. I literally cannot lose from here on out. The hard yards are done. Amazing. Soon I will be in my own house, much closer to work, thank goodness, and the feeling of home ownership will finally set in. And from there, I can look at all the landlord stuff like renting out rooms or buying a second property. But what a great song. I botched the tempo, but you know what I mean. So that's all there is to say with the investor stat. Clearly, there has been some huge progress here. The diversified grind. Don't be a one-trick pony. If parts of your life like your career, salary, and gym progress are stagnating, that's fine, because you can just make progressions elsewhere to make up for it. Be a well-rounded individual. Don't worry about being a 10 in one area, just be a 7 in several. Now, before I talk about my YouTube channel, I'll briefly mention social events. Obviously, 2025 has involved quite the grind, but I do have social events. I'll show my phone calendar for each month to show you the social events. I was in West Australia in early January for 3 to 4 days. I had a friend's graduation a few days after I got back, and a friend's engagement after that, then a family dinner the week later, went back to WA in February. That was my only social stuff for the month. That's plenty enough social stuff for me anyway, for a month. Had 4 social events in March, hung with a friend, family dinner, brother's 18th, and another family dinner. In April, there was only 1 social event on Easter Thursday, just went to my mate's place and talked shit, but I had social events at my supermarket job anyway, since during Easter, the vibes are just different and it's more fun to go to work, notably because you get a lot of free chocolates. May was a big one for social stuff. Had a friend's 29th in Melbourne one Friday, had a friend's 24th the next Friday at her new house, hung with a friend the Friday after, had a family movie night to see the remake of Lilo and Stitch the Monday after that, was nice hanging with the fam, was a bit late though, movie started at like 8:30 p.m. Like bro, half of us have work early in the morning. But it's fine, I didn't mind the movie, at least it wasn't your classic Disney woke remake shit. I had another part in the original script, but I've decided to remove it. Just know that, at least it wasn't woke, I didn't mind the movie. June we had a few more social activities. Game 1 of the NBA Finals I took off work to go watch live with my friend, as I mentioned in a recent video. The Friday after I had a friend's send-off as she was going to Europe for a while. Game 7 of the NBA Finals I went to a friend's place to watch it, then went to work at the office for 3 hours and then worked my wagey job for 3.5 hours, lol. What a day. So yeah, I don't hang out every weekend. Maybe your social life is more active than mine, but it's not like I'm some social recluse hermit who lives in his shell. I actually do stuff. I just don't talk about it since it's not relevant to my channel. Like, I'm not going to make a video titled Recap with Gamification's friend Brittany and then talk about what we did, or start filming us eating food like some stupid influencer who thinks their life is important enough to showcase 24/7. I like having my alone friend times, no need to bring the YouTube part of my life along. Okay, so here we go. Last stat, brand, which is basically my YouTube channel. As the title states, it's stagnating. Well, I titled the video Failing since it's more catchy, and in a way, it is. You're supposed to grow the channel. That's kind of the purpose of continuing to upload videos. But my subscriber count has legit not grown since late April. More than 2 months of no growth, despite uploading 16 videos since then. 16 videos and can't even get me 1 new subscriber? Huh? Meanwhile, other channels seem to just hit the algorithm luck multiple times. Shake my head. There's a conspiracy going on here, I can sense it. They saw how well my investor stat is doing and are like, oh hell no, we aren't going to let him have a good brand stat either. Suppress his videos, shadow ban him. At the very least, we've hit over the 2,000 subscriber milestone, which I had not hit at the start of 2025. So there's something. I've uploaded about 44 videos in 2025 so far, and I've made $188.62 in ad revenue. This is after YouTube's cut of it, I'm pretty sure, but it's also before taxes. After taxes, it's more like around $150-ish, maybe less. And if you saw a video on a recent side hustle idea, that being my literal wagey job, I can make more picking up 2 extra night shifts in 1 week, which are not very intrusive on my schedule. I still get home with plenty of time to relax before bed. I make more money in those 2 extra shifts in 1 standard 5-day weeknight than I have in an entire half a year on YouTube. But please tell me more about how the minimum wage jobs are beneath you and how starting your own business is the only way to escape the rat race. I don't know, bro. If I run the numbers, the extra income I receive from spending 7 extra hours at the wagey job a week literally provides me with enough after-tax money to pay for my projected fuel costs, grocery costs, car costs, example tires and mechanic fees, and social events for an entire year. The calculation you're seeing includes some figures from rate cuts here in Australia. For this argument, you only really need to pay attention to the figures with the green and black cells, but the fuel costs are based off a rough estimate. Current fuel costs are higher, but when I move house, I'll be much closer to everything. The grocery costs are about right based off of what I spent so far this year. Last year's budget was higher, but I've found more savvy ways to cut costs since 2024. And I'm also cutting, so that's less calories in general. And even then, whatever junk food I eat is usually free at the wagey job anyway. Maybe the projected car fees are a bit lower than what they will be, but I doubt it. 2 services a year, 1 minor, 1 major. If anything, that cost is a bit high. But whatever. And $800 for social events is about right. I don't go to any expensive concerts or festivals. It's only really food costs or train transport costs when visiting friends in Melbourne. So as you can see, total expenses equate to $8,700 for fuel, groceries, car and social events. Meanwhile, rough after-tax figures for the extra wagey shifts results in about $8,680. Basically, the extra shifts cover 4 expenses in my life, 2 of them being major expenses. If I'd spent all that extra time working on a YouTube channel, which is literally what I was doing in 2025 until recently, what does that get me? Maybe $150 after tax? What does that pay for? A few dinners with friends or 2 weeks of petrol? I wonder which choice I should make. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to pick more time at the wagey job over the failing YouTube channel. I'll talk more on this in another video, but it further illustrates the stagnation and an example of a YouTube channel not being the best use of your time. It sounds nice, just make fun videos and get paid for it. But some of us aren't lucky and don't hit the algorithm. And as I've demonstrated with figures, there are much better uses of your time if your intention is to make money. But it's not even all about the money. Yes, I just showed that it can cover a lot of costs, but even without the extra shifts, I can cover these costs just fine with my current base income. I'd be fine with spending more time on YouTube if I was seeing some growth. I don't care about an extra $1.20 in ad revenue, but seeing an extra 200 subscribers would absolutely go a long way for keeping the motivation for grinding out the YouTube stat going. But clearly, I'm not seeing that, am I? So why would I forfeit money that can cover 4 expenses in my life to focus a bit more on growing a channel that isn't growing? Simple. I wouldn't. But, as the title states, life is still great. Once again, another point for the diversified grind. If you put all your eggs in one basket and it doesn't work out for you, you'd feel quite stuck, demotivated, or even feel that you've wasted your time. If you focus all your time in one specific career and you get laid off, now what? Yeah, maybe you can find another job in due time, but what would you do in the meantime if all you were really focused on was your career? There's not much you can really do to improve your career if you're not currently gaining experience in it, unless you were doing study for it whilst unemployed. But if I lose my office job, well, I have my second one, but that's just then more time for gym, more time for sussing stocks, more time for YouTube, more time to make renovations to my house, or landscaping or whatever. I have plenty of extra things to do in the event of a job loss. Now, apply that logic to this scenario. Imagine I spent all of my effort, time and energy on this YouTube channel, and then it stays stagnant for a while. You could argue, well, keep going, you'll get there eventually, but basically every channel I keep my eye on, even some newer ones my algorithm has suggested to me, they've all grown subscribers in recent months. Where are mine? Not to insult some of those channels or anything, but really there's not a lot of thought behind what they have to say. It's more so pick up the camera and start yapping. It's kind of like those essays back in high school where you have to reach a 2,000 word limit, so you got to repeat things and ramble. It's kind of like that, but there's a 10-minute limit instead. Those videos kind of seem like that, but with a 10-minute limit instead. At least I have a script and some analytical thoughts behind my videos, but I suppose some people don't like that. They'd rather me just talk with no direction. I suppose I wouldn't be as pissed if everyone else had experienced the same stagnation as me, but that is not the case. Everyone else's channels seem to be progressing. It's obviously annoying, but hey, I still have my 2 jobs, still earning an income. A lot of people aren't in that boat right now. My office gig still hasn't laid me off, yet, and I have opportunities to work more at my secondary job. A lot of wagey jobs I've heard aren't offering many extra shifts lately. So even those who are employed in wagey jobs aren't exactly getting a lot of hours. I got my house almost ready. A lot of people can only dream of that day. Meanwhile, mine is not that far away. The new indicators I've found will no doubt be super useful in the future, and my cut is getting closer to being complete. We peaked at around 95 kilos, and now we're at 84 kilos. I reckon when we hit 78 kilos, there'll be some crazy results, but we're almost there. Had a few hiccups due to holiday, Easter, social events, mum's cooking, but most of those distractions will not be applicable soon enough. So I'll finally get to lock in. Enough in life is good to the point where it's not super bothersome that one of my stats is not moving. I'll still do some stuff on YouTube, but I'll be doing a lot more stock chart surfing, wagey shifts, looking at real estate, working on my house/backyard, and more gym time, as opposed to my YouTube channel. Clearly there's no growth despite my efforts, so I may as well divert some of that effort into other areas. So, what are your thoughts? Have you had a successful 2025 so far? What's your experience with the whole YouTube stagnation thing? Has your channel stagnated? Have your favorite YouTubers stagnated? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. That is all.